Why did a silly bet at a rooftop bar end with papers in my hand and my own family staring at me like a stranger? How did I become the villain while he stayed quiet and patient until the very last scene? Can a calm plan hurt more than any fight? My name is Ianthe Vale, and I tell this story because people misread me. I am 31, I set supermarket displays for a living, and I like attention. My husband is Evan, steady and polite, the kind of man who makes lists. He says calm is love, but I think calm can feel like a locked door. Our friends think I am loud, but they also laugh when I make a scene. I used to call that support, and maybe it was until it wasn't. One night I bragged that I could sleep with anyone, any time, and I drank too much. He said there was no need to prove it, and he wanted to go home. I said he was scared of losing control, and I smiled for the cameras. I told myself it was a joke, a test, a little push for fun. I told him later that honesty hurts only at first, and then it makes you free. He did not shout, and he did not cry, which felt like judgment. I thought silence meant I had won, and I slept well that night. I was wrong, and the morning made sure I understood. The cost came quietly. The night started simple with a rooftop bar and a cool breeze, and I felt like the city itself was leaning in to hear me. My friends gathered around the tall table and they teased me about my new dress and my loud laugh, and I soaked it in because attention makes me feel alive. Evan stood a step back from the railing, and he watched the group with that quiet look that always reads like a lecture. He asked if I wanted a soda instead of another cocktail, and I said I was fine, and I rolled my eyes so everyone could see I was the brave one. Harper nudged me and said the city was ours tonight, and I said the city had always been mine. The music pushed up from the speakers, and the lights from the nearby tower blinked like cameras. I let the moment grow, and I told the table I could sleep with anyone, anytime, and no one would stop me. The line came out easy and bright, and the whole group laughed, and someone tapped their glass like it was a toast, and I leaned into the joke. Evan said we did not need to prove anything, and he asked if we could head home while the trains were still running, and he tried to keep it private. I said he was scared of losing control, and I said I was only telling the truth, and I said I was tired of being treated like glass. Harper told me to own my power, and I said of course I did, and I tilted my chin like a poster model. A man from another group, who I later learned was named Marco, drifted close with a friendly smile, and he asked if we were celebrating, and I said we always were. The patio air smelled like mint and spilled liquor, and the smokers made little halos with their phones as they filmed nothing and everything. Marco asked if I wanted to check the view from the corner, and I said sure, because corners make better pictures, and pictures make better stories. Evan said he would wait by the bar because he hated smoke, and I said he could suit himself. And the group made that tiny ooh sound that means they want more. At the corner, Marco stood too close, and I did not step back, and I told myself I was performing a dare that was already spoken. He asked what the bet was exactly, and I said it was not a bet but a statement, and he laughed like it was both. A camera flash popped from somewhere behind us, and the heat in my face felt like victory. We took the metro home, and I wrote a caption about freedom that looked wise under the neon light, and I watched the likes arrive while the train shook. Evan kept his hands in his pockets, and he asked if I felt safe, and I said he could stop acting like my father. I said honesty hurts only at first, and then it makes you free, and I told him he should try it sometime. He looked out the window and said he did not want an audience, and I said we already had one, and I smiled at the reflection of my lipstick on the glass. At our stop, the city air felt damp and sweet, and I felt taller than I had in weeks. At home, the sink was full of glasses from earlier, and Evan started washing them one by one, which always means he is swallowing words. I said he could be proud that other people wanted me, and I said it meant he had made a good choice, and I said a woman with options is a happy wife. He set 2 mugs on opposite counters like tiny islands, and I laughed and called him dramatic, and I took a picture of the steam just to show I was still in charge of the mood. On the fridge, A sticky note said, "Bring forms," in his careful handwriting, and I asked what forms those were, and he said it was nothing urgent. His phone buzzed with a reminder that flashed downtown 10:45 a.m., and he swiped it away with no comment, and I told myself it was for work. I opened my messages and found a new request from Marco, and he wrote that I had a strong presence, and I told myself it was harmless. Harper sent a string of hearts and told me I had won the night, and I liked that because winning is a warm blanket. Evan put his plate in the sink and wiped the counter like he was clearing a stage, and he told me we could talk in the morning when the air was cooler. I said there was nothing to talk about because we were both adults, and he nodded like a teacher who gives up on a loud student. When I stepped into the hallway, I heard a faint beep from his phone, the kind that comes from a recording app, and I thought maybe a neighbor had left a voice memo open. He carried a pillow past me and did not touch my shoulder, and I told him he was punishing me with silence, and he said he needed rest. He closed the guest room door with a soft click, and I stood there with my phone light on, and I felt powerful and strangely empty at the same time. I posted a muted story of the city lights, and then I deleted it. And then I posted again because I wanted the night to count. In the kitchen, something smelled like warm printer toner, and I realized the little home printer had spit out a blank page on its own, which felt like a silly ghost. I laughed and tossed it in the bin, and I told myself that tomorrow I would say sorry in a cute way and we would be fine. I crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling, and the room hummed with the fridge and the pipes and my pulse, and it felt like applause that never ends. My phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number, and I let it sit because I liked the power of not answering. I opened Marco's DM anyway and typed a quick line about the view, and I watched the typing dots appear and vanish like a game. In the quiet, the apartment door latch clicked from the hallway, and I thought Evan was just checking the chain, and I told myself that the click meant nothing at all, while his muted screen lit up with private. Morning came with a heavy head and a dry mouth, and I told myself water and a bright blouse would fix it. I checked my phone and saw the patio photos climbing through the group chat, and I felt both proud and nervous. Harper wrote that the video looked iconic, and I said I knew it did. Evan moved around the kitchen like a quiet clock, and he asked if I wanted toast, and I said I was fine. He kept his eyes on the counter as if eye contact would make me explode. I posted a cropped shot of the skyline and skipped the ones where Marco's shoulder touched mine. By noon, the story had a life of its own, and I watched comments from people I barely knew. I liked the ones that called me fearless, and I ignored the ones that asked where my husband was. A message from an unknown number said the clip was on another page, and I told myself strangers always overstate it. I placed my phone face down and tried to focus on my shift. Evan sent a short text that said we would talk in the evening, and I said the same. He added that he had a personal meeting later, and I said okay like it was nothing. After work, Harper wanted to stop by the same club patio, and I agreed because returning to the scene felt like control. The air smelled like mint again, and the crowd felt familiar in a way that fed me. Marco drifted over from the rail with that easy smile, and he asked if we had all survived last night. And I said we had done more than survive. He asked what the bet had been, and I said it was only a statement, and he laughed and said statements need proof. I was aware of 2 phones held at chest height, and I tilted my chin so the angle would flatter. I let myself relax near the corner again, and I thought about the word performance like it was a shield. A flash popped from across the patio, and I told myself the light was for someone else. Harper whispered that the internet loves me today, and I said the internet always does. Marco leaned closer and asked if I wanted a drink, and I said maybe later because I wanted to appear careful. I thought about Evan's face at the sink and felt a hard knot of guilt, and then I told myself guilt was a tool used by dull people. The music thumped, and the city looked beautiful, and I believed for a small moment that beauty was the same as safety. Another message buzzed on my lock screen and showed only a preview from a group chat with a tag under my name. The ride home on the metro was bright and uneasy, and I kept checking my reflection in the dark window. A man across the aisle asked if I was the girl from last night, and I said maybe, and Harper laughed in a way that made it sound planned. I typed a caption that said, "Freedom wears red," and I pressed post. Evan texted that he would be late because of a meeting, and my screen showed a calendar pop-up that said, "Meeting personal, 3:20 p.m." I told myself it was about a work vendor. I placed the phone in my bag and tried to feel steady when the car rocked. The next morning at the supermarket back room, Mr. Ortega asked for a quick word, and I felt my throat tighten. He said a customer service note had come in about a staff member in a viral clip, and I said it was my private time. He said the brand liked quiet lives, and I said I was good at my job, and he said he wanted no more noise. I nodded like a professional, and I blamed stress and a harmless joke. He told me to take my break out of sight today, and I said sure with a smile that did not reach. When I stepped out, two stock clerks stopped talking mid-sentence, and I could feel the story sticking to me like a label. At lunch, I sat by the loading bay door with my sandwich and my phone, and I watched the clip again with the sound off. I noticed a stranger's sleeve in the corner of the frame, and I did not like that. Harper sent a message that said everything would blow over in a week, and I said that was true. Evan texted a photo of Noah's drawing of a tall building with a little red figure on top, and he said Noah wanted to show it to me tonight. I said I would be home after my shift, and that I loved the drawing. Evan replied with a simple heart, and I could not read the tone, and it annoyed me that I could not read it. When I reached home, the apartment felt neat and staged, and I could smell the faint trace of printer toner again. Evan was not there yet, and a blank sheet of paper rested in the tray as if the machine had coughed. On the fridge, the sticky note still said, "Bring forms," and a small red circle sat on the wall planner around a date next week. I opened the laptop to check a streaming show, and a reminder bounced at the corner of the screen and said, "Meeting, personal." I closed the window because it felt nosy, and I told myself I was not worried. Harper video called and asked if I was ready for a debrief, and I said I wanted quiet, and I told her everything was fine with Evan. She said I should set a public line about body autonomy, and I said maybe later. She warned that another angle of the clip was spreading, and I said the internet has a short memory. I stood on the balcony and watched traffic merge, and I told myself control was just a posture I had to keep holding. Inside, I placed 2 mugs on the counter the way Evan had done, and I laughed at my own imitation. The elevator bell from our building shaft rang somewhere below, and footsteps moved down our hall. A group chat pinged again with a new tag, and my screen flashed my full name in bold. I watched the dots as someone typed, and then I watched the message get deleted before I could open it. I heard the door across the hallway close, and for a second I thought it was Evan. Then my phone buzzed with a manager's request for a quick word in the morning, and my stomach tightened. The birthday dinner sat like a stage, with a long table and bright balloons, and I chose the seat near the middle so everyone would see me. Harper had saved a spot and said the energy needed me, and I said I was here to fix the mood. Evan arrived a few minutes late with a paper bag that held a simple gift, and he said he hoped the cake would be on time. I told him the night would be perfect if he stopped worrying, and he nodded without a word. Diana sat 2 chairs away with a steady face, and she asked how work was, and I said work was fine and busy and jealous of my free time. I felt eyes slide over me from the far end, where cousins and neighbours murmured at their own small jokes. The server poured water and said the birthday special was a family platter, and everyone agreed to share. I leaned back and told the nearest 3 people that last night had been wild, and I said, "Freedom is like a good dress." Harper said the video made me look like a star, and I smiled at the word. Evan looked at the menu and asked about the vegetarian option, and I said he was always thinking small. Maya lifted her eyebrows and asked if I was trying to start another fight, and I said I was only telling stories. The room felt warm and loud, and the lights were soft enough to make every face kind, until it wasn't. The joke started small, with someone asking who could resist me if I snapped my fingers, and I said no one of value would resist, which earned a bigger laugh than I expected. I felt the heat of it and pushed harder, and I told a trimmed version of the bet as if it were a charity stunt. Evan kept his hands folded on the table, and he said we did not need this talk in public, and he asked if we could keep the night about family. I said the family loved a good story, and I held up my glass like a host. Diana set down her fork and said kindness matters more than applause, and I said applause was a form of kindness when you think about it. Food arrived, and people settled, and still the story moved across the plates like a bright spill. A cousin asked if the man from the patio was a friend, and I said he was part of the scenery. Harper said scenery could still take a bow, and the table laughed at that. And I pretended not to notice the way Evan's shoulders grew tight. I told a line about how marriage thrives on oxygen, and parties give oxygen, and I watched the phones lift a little higher. Someone at the far end said a toast should happen, and I said I could speak if no one else wanted the honour. Evan stared at the small candle on the appetizer plate, as if he could blow it out without wind. I stood and told the room that love is not a jail, and that honest people do not fear tests. And I said Evan and I were honest people. Harper clapped first and others followed, and I felt 10 years younger and 5 inches taller. Diana did not clap, and she asked in a soft voice if honesty also meant not making a partner into a circus trick. I said a circus is fun for the whole family, which sounded clever in my head and cruel in the air. Maya whispered that I was pushing it, and I said there was nothing to push because we were all adults and everyone knew the rules. After the cake, I slipped to the restroom and checked the latest tags, and I saw a new angle of the patio clip with my face clear, and the caption called me brave with a wink that read like a slap. I felt a flash of anger at strangers for using my image like a toy, and then I felt proud, because attention is attention. When I returned, Evan stood to let me pass, and he said he would take Noah to the park in the morning, and I said he could try asking first. He sat back down and folded his napkin in a way that made his hands look older. I thought about how his calm makes me feel like a problem to be solved. Later, at the gym locker room, Harper said the momentum was on my side, and she said I should post a mirror shot and a short message about agency. I said I could, and we took a photo with our heads together and our smiles almost real. A woman near the bench looked up and asked if we were the ones from the video, and I said the city has many videos, and Harper laughed for both of us. I felt a small tremor of fear in my stomach that tasted like metal, and I told myself fear is a tool for people without a plan. I pressed upload and watched the bar crawl forward while the vents hummed. At home on the balcony, the air was cooler, and the city did not care about my small wars. I scrolled and deleted a full chat called follow-up, and I told myself the past is cleaner when edited. Inside, Evan placed 2 mugs on opposite counters again, and I felt mocked by the quiet ritual. I passed behind him and saw a desktop folder named Archive A next to one named Archive B, and I asked what he was cataloguing, and he said he was cleaning the computer, and he closed the lid. A cloud sync message flashed on the corner of the screen and said file uploaded successfully, and he turned the screen away. The printer in the hall started and spat one blank sheet, and the smell of toner drifted like a private signal. I said the blank page was creepy, and he said machines hiccup sometimes, and he asked if I wanted tea. I said I wanted him to stop acting like a manager, and he said he would not discuss this tonight. I stared at the lights below and told myself control was still in my bag if I kept my spine straight. He moved toward the guest room without a word, and I felt the old emptiness open like a small door. I DM'd Marco and said the night might need a second act, and his typing bubble appeared, then paused, then vanished. From behind the balcony glass, I heard our names float from a neighbour's television as if the city itself had a gossip hour. I wiped a smeared line of lipstick and told my reflection that I was still the one steering. Then I heard the sliding door whisper as someone from the restaurant posted a clip of my toast, and a ripple of laughter rose from phones on the street. The park looked bright and harmless, with children running in soft shoes and parents holding coffees, and I thought a normal morning would repair the mood. Evan pushed Noah on the swing with careful hands, and he asked if I wanted the next turn, and I said I would film for memories that we could all enjoy later. A woman from the building stood by the fence and pretended to check her phone, and I saw her eyes lift toward us and then drop as if she had swallowed a comment. Noah asked why Daddy slept in the small room now, and I said he was working late sometimes, and I added that families change their sleeping plans when life gets busy. Evan looked at the clouds and said he would take Noah for lunch if I had work calls, and I said I had plans that involved peace and rest and better focus. We met Diana at the community centre hall because there was a family potluck, and I felt the air change when she entered with a tight scarf and a flat smile. She asked if I was feeling well after the busy week, and I said I was great and learning to set strong boundaries, and I made sure the sentence sounded professional. People passed foil trays along the table and pretended they did not know anything about the clip, and I saw two teens laugh at a phone and then pass it down. I told a careful version of the bar night that made me sound brave and tired at the same time, and I said Evan had grown distant, and I said I needed to test if I still counted in the world. Diana said distance grows when a partner is turned into a show, and she said kindness is hard when the stage lights burn bright, and I felt the words stick like gum. Evan asked if we could keep the talk simple for Noah, and I said children are resilient, and I wondered why my chest felt tight. After the hall, I walked to the pharmacy for lotion and headache pills, and the waiting line curved past a shelf of glossy magazines that promised clean lives. A neighbour from our floor stood 2 spaces ahead and whispered to another woman about brand images and family values, and I saw a small reflection of my hair in the freezer glass beside them. I kept my eyes on a basket of toothbrushes and told myself strangers love simple stories where they can be judged for free. My phone buzzed with a new tag that used my full name again, and I told myself it was good to get mentions, and the lie sounded strange even to me. Diana sent a message that asked if I needed anything for dinner, and I typed that I had it handled, and I deleted the sentence twice before pressing send. In the parking garage, the air echoed like a quiet hall, and it made every voice sound private and official. Evan's car idled near the ramp, with the nose pointed toward the exit, and Noah sat in the back, with a comic book open like a shield. Evan said he could pick up Noah from school for the next few days if my schedule was crowded, and I said that sounded like he was weaponizing kindness to control the time. He did not answer, and he tapped his phone once and slipped it into his pocket, and I felt outside the room even though we were 2 steps apart. A thin binder labelled utilities sat on the passenger seat and looked too thick, and I decided it was only bills and repair notes and nothing more. On the wall calendar at home, a date next week was circled in red, and a phone alarm had chimed earlier with the words paper drop, and I felt a small chill that I blamed on the garage air. Back at the apartment, I set a cheerful voice and told Noah that families bend and do not break, and he asked if houses can break when people stop talking kindly. I said houses stand if everyone works hard and respects the plan, and I heard how much my sentence sounded like a poster. Evan moved to the guest room with a small bag that held nothing dramatic, and he placed 2 mugs on opposite counters like a quiet map. I stood on the balcony with the city loud below, and I told myself control still lived inside my posture and my phone, and I kept my back straight. HR called me into the small glass room, and the open office went quiet in that fake polite way, and I sat with my hands folded like a school kid. Mr. Ortega said the brand needed a calm week, and he asked if I could stop feeding the rumor cycle, and I said I would be discreet and focused and very professional. He slid a short conduct note across the table and asked for a signature, and I said the clip had been taken out of context, and I added that personal life should be off limits. He nodded without warmth and said he only cared about displays and schedules, and I said I understood and thanked him for his guidance like a person on a training video. When I stood to leave, I felt eyes lift over cubicle walls, and I thought how strangers love a neat scandal that fits in a headline. On the stairwell at home, I met Evan coming up with Noah's lunchbox, and the echo made his voice sound careful and official. He said Noah had eaten well and asked if the lunchbox could stay at his place for now, and I said the lunchbox belonged here because this was still our centre. He nodded once and said he would handle things properly, and he put his earbuds in as if a switch had been flipped inside him. I said properly sounded like a threat dressed as manners, and he did not answer, and the quiet stretched long and thin. He handed me a folded note from Noah about a school project, and the paper felt warm from his pocket, and that warmth made me angry for no reason I could name. I stepped onto the balcony after dusk and tried to slow my breathing, and the wind carried up the thud of buses and one far siren. I sent Marco a short message about meeting for clarity, and he replied that he was out of town and wished me peace, and his typing bubble stopped and never returned. Harper texted a pep line about owning the narrative, and I told her I was fine, and then I muted the thread because the noise felt like sand in my teeth. Inside the living room, the printer clicked and spit one blank page again, and the smell of toner slid out like a quiet signal. On the wall planner, the red circled date looked louder than before, and a phone reminder buzzed and flashed downtown 4:05 p.m. before Evan dismissed it with a flat thumb. At the supermarket loading bay the next day, I leaned on a pallet and scrolled the gallery, and I noticed a tucked photo of a document edge that I had snapped by accident. I hid it between two pet pictures and felt clever for no good reason. A forklift beeped backward like a small alarm, and I imagined how simple life would be if everyone stopped replaying the same 30 seconds of my night. When I came home, the dining table showed a new order. 3 binders labelled Home, Auto, Bank in a clean row, and a single USB stick with today's date tucked under the taxes folder with a neat strip of tape. His laptop was open to a spreadsheet with initials and dates in tiny cells, and he closed it when I stepped closer, and he said he was organising old bills, and I said he was acting dramatically. He set 2 mugs on opposite counters again, and then he put on headphones and walked to the back room, and the hum of a shredder started like a small storm behind a closed door. I said this was just a rough patch and that adults adapt, and he said he would keep everything proper and calm, and the words landed heavier than any shout. I paced the hallway and tried to decide which version of myself would win this story, and none of the versions felt safe. I chose the office tower lobby because the light looked kind on skin, and the marble softened footsteps, and I told myself public space meant neutral ground. I sent Evan a message about meeting to clear the air, and I added that we should show our best selves for the building cameras. He replied with a simple confirmation and no extra words, and I read that silence as guilt, even though I knew it could be anything. I arrived early and checked my reflection in the glass, and I practiced a calm face that said I was the reasonable one. People crossed the floor with badges and paper cups, and I pictured them later repeating my version of the meeting. I kept telling myself that the story belonged to the first voice that stuck. When Evan stepped from the elevator, he looked unusually still, and he stood straighter than normal, and that shape made me nervous. He said he wanted stability, and he said we would talk with care, and I thought I heard a warning inside the gentle tone. A woman in a dark blazer approached us and asked to confirm my full name, and I answered with a steady voice because I believed she was the concierge. She said she had documents for me, and she said service would be recorded here, and the word service wiped the warmth from my arms. I tried to laugh like she had made a mistake, and I told her we were only here to sort a small misunderstanding. She handed me a packet with my name, and the top page used words that felt cold and heavy. It said divorce petition, and it said temporary financial orders and possession orders, and it listed a proposed custody schedule date, and it explained interim terms that start now. I said this was cruel, and I said the family did not deserve a paper attack, and my voice lifted, and I hated that it was lifted. Evan said he wanted calm steps and legal order, and he said there would be no more public games, and he said he would follow the process. He did not raise his voice, and he did not ask for pity, and that steadiness hurt more than a shout. I told him this would ruin Noah, and I said judges do not know our love, and I said he was letting strangers take my home. The woman explained that the interim possession order meant clear access rules for the apartment starting tonight, and she said the temporary schedule covered pickups and weekends until the next date, and she spoke like a bus timetable. A security guard looked over with a neutral face, and he asked if assistance was needed, and Evan said everything was proper and fine. Diana stood near the pillars with a folded scarf and watched without stepping in, and Maya hovered 2 paces behind me with eyes that said she would not lie for me. I flipped the pages and saw instructions for keys, and I saw a note about bank transfers and living costs, and the simplicity of the bullets felt like a door closing. I said he was making me the villain, and I said the internet had lied about my heart, and I said this was revenge and not love. He answered that this was about stability for our son, and he repeated that it would stay lawful and respectful. And then he stepped back. Phones lifted around us in that quiet, hungry way, and I felt the floor tilt even though it did not move. The lobby bell chimed, and a cold draft slid across my ankles like the start of winter. I signed a delivery confirmation because my hand moved the way it always does when a form is placed in front of me, and my name looked strange in the small box. The woman thanked me and noted the time, and she walked away without theatre, and the lack of theatre felt final. Evan nodded to Maya and then to Diana, and he said he would be in touch through proper channels, and then he left through the sliding doors. The result arrived inside my chest a second later. I did not control tonight, and the pickups were not mine to set, and the interim orders held like a lock. I stood very still with papers that made a new map for my life.